Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. How close have you ever come to dying? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
I almost stepped in front of a semi-trailer truck that was doing 110 km/h to a red light. The only reason why I didn't step out onto the road earlier and get splattered was because my lighter was playing up and it didn't want to light my smoke, so I stopped to cup it. I could say that smoking saved my life that day, but on the flip side, I might have been paying more attention to the traffic if I hadn't been trying to light my smoke. LOL. I fell 5 stories, 55 feet. I was pushed off of a balcony. Luckily, I landed on a patch of grass that was about 6 by 6 feet, with cement planters and a gridiron fence around it. Lucky spot to hit from that angle. Broke over 25% of the bones in my body. Was fully paralyzed from the waist down. Had a broken rib. Punctured my lung. 1 compound fracture. Almost made me bleed out. Cracked my head open on a balcony going down. And again, on my own knee during impact. Was in the hospital for a year. The paramedics that initially brought me to the hospital would visit me from time to time, saying they needed to see a win. The spinal surgeon neurologist told my dad that he was excited because he really gets to work on these cases, meaning falls and injuries like that are usually DOA. Have made a full recovery since then. Twice, my heart stopped due to drug overdose. The first time I woke up out of nowhere to people going through my pockets and 2 guys talking about what dumpster to put me in. The second time, my first wife had to do CPR to revive me. That time I felt like I almost died. I was ice cold and a slight blue color. I was out for over a minute. You will all be glad to know I didn't F with drugs like that anymore. 20 years ago, I was on the verge of a mental breakdown. I was sitting on the bed in a motel with all my life crashing down around me. I had my sidearm next to me and 2 rounds in the mag. Why 2? In case the first one misfired. That's how I resigned I was to do it. Pretty bloody close. I had a neighbor who was self-medicating and got it into his drug-addled head that the man living next to him, me, was Satan, and he needed to kill me before I broke into his house and killed him in the night. So, he got a big gun and shot about 100 holes into the side of my house in an attempt to kill me. I hid in my bathtub for several hours while the psycho turned my house into Swiss cheese, while the cops waited for an opportunity to charge into his house and grab him. Thankfully, I wasn't hurt, but he ruined my house, LOL. I've taken a toaster bath. I've OD'd on cocaine multiple times. I've dated people who could potentially disappear from my life. I have vertical scars on my arms. But the closest? I slipped and fell in the shower. I broke a tile with the palm of my hand. When I got to the hospital and the nurse cleaned my wound, I saw my own artery. Fun fact, it started pumping blood noticeably faster when I saw it. Scary shit. I've drowned to unconsciousness twice. I've also been shot in the head with an air pistol, stabbed in the hand, which I raised and blocked the knife with, accidentally overdosed and had my stomach pumped, almost been crushed by a falling tree, fell backwards off of a cliff but got grabbed and hauled up by my friend, got thrown off my bike and almost got run over by a lorry, almost got hit with flying debris from a car crash, got trapped in a forest fire on foot, and probably some more stuff I can't remember right now. My wife says it's a miracle I'm still alive. Was on deployment in Afghanistan on patrol. It was my first tour as a gunner. The Taliban ambushed and fired RPGs at our MATV. All missed, but one that exploded right in the side of the gunner hatch. Had it not been for the protection of my Kevlar helmet and the turret, the explosion would have likely claimed my life. Shrapnel would have probably taken my head. I was home alone and started to choke on a vitamin. I couldn't breathe for maybe 2 minutes. It felt like my head was going to explode, and I rammed my whole body into the wall, and I coughed it up. Now I don't take any pills unless I'm near somebody or on FaceTime with someone. When I was 6, I was in my dad's living room with all my Legos spread across the floor while I was building a spaceship of some sort. When I was satisfied with it, I got up and excitedly ran to the bathroom to show Dad, who was taking a shower at that moment. Once he opened the door, we heard a really loud crash come from somewhere in the apartment, and when we went out to look, the entire ceiling in the living room had collapsed into our living room, including all the contents of the apartment upstairs, like tables, couches, chairs, and the like. There was dust and debris everywhere, but my dad and I both looked at each other like I had just dodged death. If I had been sitting there not only a few seconds longer than I did, I would have been crushed. When I was a child, I used to take part in some pretty silly but fun games with 3 other kids, where we would challenge each other in different ways. We were on a farm with a barn full of hay bales, and one of us came up with the idea to see how long someone could hold their breath while their head was buried under the hay and the others sat on top of them. If someone tapped another's thigh, it signified their desire to release their grip. Everyone respected that until it was my turn. I remember them laughing as I started to panic and the light above me disappeared until I somehow went into shock. I pushed all 3 of them off me, punched the first one in the face as hard as I could, and then ran away crying. Now that is a memory for life. I attempted to hang myself from a pine tree. I planned it for weeks and marked the branches where I needed to stand and where my head needed to be with a permanent marker. Also measured out the rope just right. When I jumped, I hit the ground before the rope could extend. I did my math wrong. Got serious rope burn on my neck and could barely swallow for weeks. I'm not going to explain how I got my math wrong because, unfortunately, I could see people saying this post and using it to do the same thing to themselves. I never could achieve it successfully again because the first attempt was so scary that survival instinct stopped me from jumping again. In my town, there was a serial artist on the prowl. This date would have been in 1998. Big deal. Guy attacked women in several states. For a couple of days, our school was on lockdown with no recess or outdoor activities. Our parents wouldn't let us play outside either. I remember Mom freaking out because she heard noises outside. I remember seeing cops with dogs going through the creek. He was eventually captured after not very long and is serving a life sentence. Many years later, probably 10 years ago, I was reading an article about the person. It discussed his 1998 escape and how he made his way to my town and attempted to break into homes. It specifically mentioned a street close to mine and how he was looking in windows. As a 7-year-old boy, I was probably not his target, but I sometimes wonder if Mom did in fact hear him outside. 1.5 years ago, we climbed Mount St. Helens in Washington. On the way down, I lost my footing and fell. The climb is basically moving on and around boulders. I remember rolling for what seemed like forever, and having the time to think, holy shit, I'm going to die. Then just like that, I stopped. A friend had been further down and instinctively threw out his arm and stopped my fall. I was so lucky not to have a serious injury. I have scars, but I lived. What really gets me is that my husband telling me that as he watched me fall, he'd never felt so helpless in his life. Doctors refused to diagnose or treat my asthma before I turned 5 because apparently toddlers can't have asthma according to them. So between the ages of 2 and 5, I was regularly hospitalized for asthma attacks and nearly died a few times. Fun fact, I'm the reason my parents decided to get health insurance. Otherwise, I would have bankrupted them as a toddler. Also, I was in a car accident a few years back that, according to the police, the body shop repair guy, the insurance adjuster, and my doctor said I shouldn't have survived. I walked away with only a bruised leg. Wear your seatbelt, y'all. At 35, way too many times that I'd actually like to admit, there were nights of attempted suicide, like actual attempt. There were nights when I thought being drunk and driving a Mustang at 80 plus miles per hour was an acceptable thing to do in your early to mid-20s. There were times when I was deployed that I thought I probably wasn't going to make it back home. There were times when I just wasn't paying attention and almost did something stupid, like accidentally letting my knee touch a heat sink full of 227 VAC. Other times, like when I slipped on a roof 40 feet up, or when I was chainsawing a tree with a broken ladder. I'm not going to say it's unfair that women generally live longer, but I am going to say there's not much of a mystery as to why.
Well, that certainly is a lot of almosts for you, and it's good to hear that your perspective changed as you grew up, age-wise, and stopped doing the silly things we do when we're young and invulnerable to injury.
It was a while ago when I was just 13 years old. During winter, I and my friend were lurking around some abandoned place that looked like a stadium, and on the corner of it, there was like a small fire that looked like it was a pile of trash burning. My friend decided we should go there and warm our hands a bit, and we went and crouched near it, basically warming our hands for about 3 to 4 minutes, and out of the blue, something just exploded in our face like a flashbang. I literally couldn't see for a good 15 seconds. I still vividly remember it. It was a small gas cylinder underneath the pile of trash, and I'm not sure if someone put that there on purpose with bad intentions, but my friend believes it might have been the case. They did a good job, though, on the attempted murder, but we somehow got lucky with only a face and hand burn, a few scars to carry on with life. Woke up driving straight toward an unguarded cliff into a fjord. This was a while ago, and I had no reasonable way to get an international cell plan. The other 2 people interested backed out, and I went alone because no way was I canceling a trip to Iceland. Middle of the northern portion of the West Fjords. No way to contact anyone, paper map, and a pre-planned route. I used Google to check the morning before leaving. I was running late from my hotel. I couldn't call to let them know or change the reservation, and then that happened. Drove slowly and very attentively the next town, took a nap, chugged caffeine, and got to the hostel before they called the police about a missing tourist. They were concerned, but just glad I showed up. My appendix ruptured, but my liver and intestines stuck to it, avoiding everything spilling out of peritonitis. They sent me home from the ER, and I spent the whole day turning from pain in my bed. The next day I got an ultrasound, and they sent me to another ER to have surgery. 2 weeks later, I got infected, and they had to put a drainage in it. That was done awake with local anesthesia. That does not work when they puncture your intestines with a huge needle. Choking on melted cheese from a McDonald's poutine. I recall tapping my mom to alert her because I couldn't talk. She just looked at me and then continued eating. As I was panicking, my little brother's drink was right there, and I was debating on whether or not to drink some because I knew he would be mad at me. Like, piss my brother off or continue choking. It shouldn't have taken me too long to decide, but obviously I drank some. Also, alcohol withdrawal. Just on Good Friday, I was in a boating accident and got trapped underneath my capsized boat in complete darkness. I was holding my breath for about 2 minutes, and I said to myself, okay, this is it, and went to breathe in a lung full of water to end it. And by the absolute chance, I breathed in, and there was a tiny air pocket. So I then had to figure out where I was trapped. And about 15 minutes later, after freeing myself, I was rescued. So I woke up and my legs started jerking uncontrollably, and then my whole body started having spasms. It went on for about 20 minutes, and then my wife called an ambulance and I blacked out. When I woke up in the hospital, they immediately had me drink a colon cleanser drink. It cleaned me out pretty quickly. According to the doctors, the toxicity levels were so high, it almost killed me. Now I drink one of those cleansers about once every 6 months. I had assumed that since I eat fairly healthy and don't drink or smoke, my colon would naturally clean itself, as a perfectly healthy person would. I've learned now from multiple doctors that there's a very high percentage of people that think they're healthy but have one of many conditions in the categories of autoimmune disorders or the wide range of mild colitis, Crohn's, or colon disorders that may even be in remission when your body is not absorbing the full range of nutrients from foods while bacteria grows even with eating recommended fibers. When I had the norovirus, I was alone at home by myself. My roommate and his girlfriend made some nice dinner, and we had a nice evening. My roommate went over to his girlfriend's place to sleep. Suddenly, around 1 a.m. in the night, I wake up shaking and feeling the saliva build up in my mouth. I ran to the toilet, puked my insides out, and then when I thought it couldn't get worse, everything also had to leave from the rear. It felt like a water jet. Anyway, there I was sitting on the toilet, exhausted, sweating, feeling like shit, and I thought it was over. It wasn't. I felt nauseous suddenly and passed out. The doctors explained to me that this is atypical because it happens due to the huge shifts of fluids in the body, or something like that. On the way down, I hit my head somewhere, maybe on the small ledge of the shower, and I don't know how long I was lying on the bathroom floor with my head busted open and bleeding all over. When I came to again, my only wish was to somehow make it into my bed, and I had no strength to call for anyone. I passed out again in bed in a few minutes. Sometime in the morning, my roommate's girlfriend arrived, and when she saw the bathroom, she rushed into my room and woke me up. We called the ambulance, and doctors said I was very, very lucky. Even healthy people can die from dehydration, and in my case also the loss of blood. I seriously thought when I closed my eyes while in bed, this is it. It's scary. I can't swim. I never learned it. I can keep myself afloat and paddle like a dog, but moving in a body of water is hard. One summer I went to a lake with some friends. We all went in at some point, and they made their way to a little floating island in the middle of the lake. I was hesitant at first, but tried to paddle my way over there as well. Halfway through, my legs started to get tired, but I tried to push through anyway. Big mistake. They suddenly felt like heavy boulders dragging me down. I wasn't able to move them at all anymore. Panic set in, and I had trouble keeping my head above water. I could barely get air in, so I couldn't even scream for help. The slight current of the lake and the adrenaline in my system got me back to shore at some point. After that experience, I've never not listened to my body when it tells me to stop. I now also understand why a drowning person is silent. 3 times, extremely close to death. My mom was pregnant with twins. A physical accident during pregnancy caused her to lose my twin brother. I was able to survive. Drank drain cleaner when I was a toddler. My idiot dad put it in a Gatorade bottle under the sink. The third one was a couple of years ago. I looked left before crossing the street, then looked right and started crossing. Little did I know that in the time I moved my head from left to right, a souped-up sports car that was 100% silent came barreling around the corner at top speed. They had to swerve into the other lane to avoid hitting me. My first memory is of touching the metal tines on an electrical plug while trying to plug in a plastic Christmas tree when I was 2. I'd wanted to hear the music. I remember waking up in the ambulance. A horse stomped on my back when I was 4. Didn't break any bones, as according to the doctor I was too flexible. Still got a rib that doesn't like to sit straight though. At the age of 8, I accidentally popped a lung while blowing up a balloon. I became extremely tired and succumbed to sleep before realizing there was a problem. Woke up, and the side of my face was swollen up, made a crackling sound when touched. My mom rushed me to the ER. The doctor said the hole had sealed itself back up, and that I should be okay, provided I take it easy. The doctor also mentioned that they had never encountered such a situation before, though I'm not sure which specific aspect prompted their comment. A lot of shit pointing to neon signs that got ignored. I have EDS and POTS and wasn't diagnosed until I was 34. Many other significant events occurred over the years, but these were among the most impactful. I blacked out while driving to a medical emergency I had. When I regained consciousness, I was overlooking a large canyon. I had gone off the side of the road and crashed into a rock right at the edge of the cliff. It was the only large rock in the area that could have stopped me from going over the edge. Pretty close. On the first attempt, the bright light in the tunnel were visible to me. The second time, the hammer struck what I believe was a dud round. Although there was a round in the chamber, it did not fire. Third time, I stopped breathing long enough to stop caring that I wasn't breathing, and after the initial discomfort faded away, OMG, it was the best feeling I've ever had in my life. I remember thinking, wow, this makes it all worth it. Multiple nights in my life, my asthma and acid reflux activated simultaneously and choked me for hours. All I could do was sit up, clutch my chest, and force myself to physically gasp for air once every 30 to 60 seconds so I didn't suffocate. Years of incompetent doctors preceded my proper diagnosis, and now I am on medication. I'll never take breathing for granted. Last fall was scary at the time. I had a palpitating heart, and I was sick as well. I went to the bathroom, and when I was done peeing and zipped up, right when I turned around to wash my hands, for 1/1,000,000th of a second, my mind and body literally felt like it was simultaneously turned off, like I blinked out of existence for 0.1 millionth of a second. It was like, whoa, because I noticed that while being conscious and was still standing, thankfully, so I didn't fall and hit my head and potentially die that way. That makes me wonder, people die in their sleep because their body simultaneously turned off. If so, what caused it? Is it because of the conductivity or displacement of various metals inside our body? I don't know, man, but I'm glad I'm still here today because I have a dream to change people's lives around the world for the better, and I'll be pissed if I die before that happens. It's difficult to pinpoint precisely. I suppose it's as close as you can get to dying without actually doing so. There have been several instances in my life where I felt it was time to end. The one I will share is on a Sunday morning. I already have put in 110 hours that week. I rolled a truck twice. I was about 20 miles outside of town on a not very busy road. On the second roll, I was tossed out the passenger window and my head got busted pretty bad, and my back was broken in 2 places. I was out there badly injured and unconscious. It wasn't until my boss happened to glance at the GPS map and see my truck wasn't moving and shouldn't be stopped where it was. My company yard was in the next town 45 miles away. When I wasn't answering my phone, and she checked GPS and saw that my truck had gone from 60 to 0 way too quick, she alerted EMS, and her son headed out too, from over 45 miles away. He beats EMS to me. When he arrived, I wasn't breathing, and he couldn't feel a pulse, so he began CPR. I don't know how long he did, but when he finally revived me, he was almost given out, and it seemed, and I was disoriented and in tremendous pain once I woke up, like it still took EMS a long time to get me out there. But had he not come out and given me CPR, I don't think I could have survived until the ambulance got there. And it was the hand of God that anyone even realized I needed help when they did.